Solly, good day.
Hi, Dumeleng. How are you?
Good yourself?
I'm very well, man.
Great.
Well.
And how's campaign been going?
Look, it's a lot of fun, long hours, lots of travel, but it's worth every bit of it. This election is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to, redirect the country in the right direction. And I've been part of, elections, the past 5 elections, and I actually look forward to the next day being on the ground or doing, part of this in order to speak about our plans as the DA. Our manifesto is centered around rescuing South Africa because our belief is where our country is right now. It's a very crucial stage that if we do not change the national government, a few years down the line, we might not be able to, redirect or fix some of the damage that is currently ongoing, which will be more accelerated and more devastating for the country if the ANC continues to be in power.
Now, Solly, the ANC speaks about a Tino Dream.
Yeah.
Talk about this child born in 1994 and who has better opportunities than the parents ever did. What do you think about this?
Look, I think that story of Dintswalo is half the story of the reality that happens in South Africa. I think while there might be some people who share the same trajectory as Dintswalo, there are definitely many more others whose life has taken a different trajectory. And those are in the majority compared to the narrative of Dintswalo. There are young people in this country who have never worked a day in their life post-graduation. Many of them will probably never work in their life. Some of them, will die without having worked in their life if this trajectory continues. It's very heartbreaking for a young person to pass matric very well, go to varsity, scrabble through varsity, face the threat of financial exclusion every year, pass and struggle to find a job, and never find a job, right? And as a result, even those graduates that are working, the majority are underemployed. The majority are in environments where they're surviving rather than living because you need an injection of income.
And the fact that John, the leader of the DA, doesn't seem to have strong academic records, but, he seemed to have won against Dr. Multiparty. Would that not be a sign that skin color actually plays a role in the DA?
No, I don't think it's about that. Political parties elect their leadership based on political processes, right? And those processes are democratic. It's about elections. Otherwise, in the country, we would be having the highest educated person being, the president of the country. And democracy doesn't work that way because it would make politics and democracy elitist. The beauty and the power of democracy is that it says everyone has an equal stake in participatory democracy. Everyone has an equal stake in electable politics, right? So therefore, you can have someone who might not have a university degree, right? Have solid leadership traits. That person should not be handicapped by the absence of, post-school qualifications or university qualification to serving as leadership, because it would be a mistake and I think an injustice to democracy itself to say that involvement in politics or rising towards leadership positions in politics should only be acceptable to people who have a certain level of qualification, because what it would do, it would make politics very, very exclusive.
And do you think there's a black cabal, a white cabal in the DA? Certainly, Musima Mine and Bongani think that there are divisions between the black and the white people inside the DA. They both spoke about the return of Helen to the DA as being problematic to the aspirations of black leaders in the DA. Do you think there's some truth to that?
No, I don't believe in that. And it's very unfortunate that, my former colleagues would characterize it as that. You may not like someone Itumeleng, right? But if they emerge to the position that they occupy through a democratic process, you have to accept that. If you only respect democracy when it favors outcomes that you like, then you are not a firm believer in democracy, right? Because democracy is about free and fair internal elections.
So should the DA come to power tomorrow, do South Africans have to fear perhaps maybe white people being more empowered than black people? What paint a picture for us if the DA gets into power?
No, because we have demonstrated that we are a party for all South Africans, right? That the DA is a home for all South Africans who share our common values, regardless of background, regardless of race. 1/3 of the DA's membership is black South Africans. 1/3 of the DA's support base is white South Africans. 1/3 of the DA's support base is colored South Africans. On the basis of that, we're the most diverse party in this country. None of our peers have that. So I think this angle that you're asking from is something that our opponents want to suffocate the DA in. And the fact that, except in 2021, except in 2019, where we suffered a setback, the DA has consistently grown through an election, right? And we would not grow and we would not be the size that we are now if we are not a party where different South Africans, black, white, or colored, find resonance with. The DA since 1994, when it was the DP, has grown to the extent that in 2006, when we only had one government in the Western Cape, we now have 33 municipalities, 33 centers of governance that the DA is leading, including Umgeni, right? In a population that is over 75% black, they've got a white DA mayor there, Chris Papas, in Umgeni.
So are you saying that should the DA come into power, things will be kept as they are right now? Or do you feel perhaps that the way appointments are going on in this country, whether it's government or private sector, it's not how the DA would necessarily do things?
Look, there's one thing regarding the public service that the DA would do differently, right? Which is to professionalize the public service. You would know very well that the DA has taken on a very lengthy legal fight against the ANC to get the records of their cadre deployment committee meetings, right? And the reason we did that was to fight against the policy of cadre deployment because of what it does, which is to limit or restrict appointments in the public service to individuals aligned to the ANC, right? And by consequence, exclude any professional or any individual who, regardless of their experience, regardless of their skills, regardless of their fitness for purpose to do a particular job, has to be discarded because the ANC hasn't vetted that individual. And we're saying that is primarily the reason why, when you look at the performance of the civil service in South Africa, either through national government departments, provincial government departments, when you further go into local government and state-owned enterprises, we've had the unprecedented levels of underperformance that we've had. We've had the unprecedented levels of lack of accountability that we've had the unprecedented levels of corruption that we've had, because individuals who are appointed in the public service, who should be performing their functions in a bipartisan manner, end up taking instructions from political headquarters of the ANC rather than executing the mandate and the functions of their positions. And to showcase that that model doesn't work, where there is no cadre deployment, like in the Western Cape, where the DA does not fiddle in the appointment of the staff in the administration, why is it that where that happens, you've got clean audit outcomes. You've got the highest levels of investment in infrastructure. right? You've got the highest levels of good governance that is even supported by reports and independent research, whether be it from national government or from independent bodies, because it shows you there's a correlation between the caliber of individuals you appoint and the process through which they are appointed and the outcomes.
So on to my next question. There's an issue in Joburg, and I think there was one such an issue in, DA nationally, where the opposition has accused the DA of spying on the opposition, using spy equipment. I'm not sure if you've heard about this. Have you?
I mean, that was a rumor that has never been tested. But just for the record, we don't do that sort of things.
Yeah, because the question I would like to ask you, I mean, they seem to be pursuing it, and we've got the government of local units in Joburg launching several investigations into this. Muchave said, I don't know anything about this, and there have been inquiries since the late Mayor Jeff Makuo, which, we haven't seen reports of till today. What is the DA thinking about this? Do you think it's a ploy by the opposition to frustrate the DA, or perhaps to put maybe a black paint on the DA as spying on other people?
Look, the DA will never spy on other people. We are the party of individual freedom. We are the party that respects individual freedom. More than that, we are the party of the rule of law. And we will never do things that are outside the prescripts of the law. No structure of the DA would sanction anything like that.
And in terms of the Secretary to Council to Parliament, and his salary, I mean, we still have the Speaker, resigning and facing all these charges and, up and down court. But, that question of the Secretary to Parliament's salary remains. And, is the DA still pursuing it, or now that the Speaker's gone, you don't have to necessarily chase after it?
No. It's something that we are still pursuing, because what happened in there is very, very, very wrong. In that,
do you think he was greedy? I mean, to take so much money from the taxpayer?
Put that aside, right, for a moment. The issue in here was that the position was advertised for a certain remuneration level, and eventually, what happened was that, the secretary, not the secretary, the former Speaker of Parliament did not disclose to Parliament that in the final appointment that the remuneration was inflated. That's where the problem is, that Parliament was misled. And that's where the Speaker should take responsibility and be accountable. And simply because she resigned doesn't mean that she can't face, accountability over her actions during her tenure.
And the Secretary to Parliament, he would have to be challenged at some point as well. Why are you guys leaving him and mainly pointing it at the Speaker?
Well, the appointing authority was Parliament.
Okay.
Right? The appointing authority was Parliament, and the executive authority for Parliament is the Speaker of Parliament. So ultimately, the buck stops with the Speaker, right? And in pursuance of that, if, it then finds that somehow the Secretary of Parliament was complicit, then, he must also face, accountability onto that. But in here, the problem is the employer, in our view, and the employer has to face consequences.
Yeah. In terms of land and economy, the DA has always been criticized as not wanting to return the land to its rightful owners, and that the economy still rests in the hands of a few. What's the DA's policy on land and bringing back the economy to the rightful owners?
Look, I think a lot of what is being said is I don't know, man, how to phrase it, but I think it's incorrect framing of the DA's position, right, on it. And it's our responsibility to correct that, and we will, starting with this one. The DA is in support of making sure that land that is in ownership of the state, right, should be released for different purposes that it can serve, right? The state, as it is, owns, I don't have the exact figures, but large pockets of land that are sitting idle, that can be used, for instance, for housing purposes. There are three large pieces of land in Cape Town, for instance, one in Wingfield and another one next to where one of the parliamentary residents of Parliament are, right? Those pieces of land are owned by the Department of Public Works. The city of Cape Town, for as long as 14 years ago, when I was working in the mayor's office then, had been approaching national government to say, release this land to us so that we can build social housing in there. And that would go a long way in dealing with the housing needs of poor communities in Cape Town. National government has simply refused. And that is just one major example. There are many other examples of that. Large pockets of land that are sitting idle in government's hands that's not doing. We're also saying one of the things that government can do immediately is to give people title to their land, right? So that the land can have value to it, so that people can leverage it as, security of tenure and empower them economically. That hasn't happened. There is an example of, a farmer in Limpopo. I think his name was Ntato Rasuche. I might be getting the surname wrong. He had been leasing a farm from government for over 20 years. And he was ready and prepared to purchase that, because you gotta be renewing constantly. And government just didn't want to give him ownership to that and title to that. And as the DA, we supported him in the legal fight, to eventually get that farm so that he can farm it. And he's been a successful, small scale farmer in there. And that's what government should be doing, should be, assisting those that have demonstrated a proven ability to leverage the land either for commercial or residential purposes and facilitating the release of that land and empowering them with security of tenure.
And in terms of the economy, those who complain that the DA would keep the economy in the hands of the few white rich, what do you think about that?
It's absolute nonsense, because even where we're governing, we are not doing that. So I just think it's political spin of our opponents, which is not based on the truth, which is not even real, because it doesn't exist. And we've showcased where we're governing, for instance, in the Western Cape, even in Midvaal, what we do is we are very clear that we want to establish and run governments that create an enabling environment to attract investments. Right? So what are some of the things that do we do? We provide, incentives for businesses to come and invest in the areas where we are governing, because we know that it will contribute towards job creation and improving the quality of life in those areas. So whether it be in the form of, rates rebates, for instance, for new businesses to come and, invest in there. And what we do, unlike in other governments, we're the DA governments, we provide stability. Because if you are an investor and you've got the option of either investing in Joburg or in Tlokwe or in Secunda or Durban and Cape Town, you are going to look at a few key things. One of those is, where do I have the highest guarantee that the taps are running? That will be Cape Town. Where do I have the highest guarantee that, the roads are well maintained and safe? That will be Cape Town. Where do you have the highest guarantee that refuse will be removed? That's Cape Town. And this is supported by evidence. It's not just me stating things to advocate for my party's record in governance, right? And where those things happen, that's where you're going to get different investors.
Now, the Multiparty Charter, Heaven Muchave says that criticized the IFP and the DA for not completely sticking to the charter. He says you guys have gone out in public to say you would be at some point willing to work some kind of coalition arrangement with the ANC. Is that true? And is the Multi-Party Charter intact? Because if we are going to oppose the ANC, all of you need to be united.
The Multi-Party Charter, in our view, is intact. You'll remember the Multi-Party Charter was an initiative of the DA.
Of course.
It's something that we started because we wholly believe in it. And we will not do anything that is against the spirit of something that we ourselves have initiated. and gone to great length to, reach out to the political parties that are in the charter and kept it intact as it is. So I don't think any of our partners should worry about the DA's loyalty to the multi-party charter because we are very, very faithful to it and we're very loyal to it and we want the multi-party charter to succeed.
And that means you will never work with the ANC?
We have started the multi-party charter for the primary reason of being an alternative to the ANC. And that is why we're doing everything possible to ensure that it succeeds as an alternative to take out the ANC out of government.
Sure. And as I'm about to close, Solly, former President Zuma, you have met him a few times in Parliament. And I'm sure you've interacted with him. He recently started the MK party and, the ANC has described it as a rebel party, and which could lead South Africa to what they have described as a civil war. What have your interactions been with him in the past, and what do you think of him as a leader?
I've had very, very minimal interaction with former President Jacob Zuma. In fact, I think it's just been limited to pleasantries on the corridors of the National Assembly and Parliament.
And your thoughts about him? What do you think about him as a person?
Well, I think as a leader, he has no interest in upholding the rule of law. And I think he's someone who's only supportive of the rule of law for as long as it favors him. And if it doesn't, then, he finds all faulty lines in it. I do not believe that he believes in the principles and values of what our democracy is.
Sure. And Solly, just as we close, if you could tell those watching the show 5 reasons why they need to vote for the DA.
Yeah. Look, the DA represents the best prospects of rescuing South Africa from going through a further decline. Our manifesto is centered on making sure that, one, we halve violent crimes. That includes murders because crime affects all of us. And we are committing to making sure that we'll professionalize the public service by making sure that all appointments in the public service are done fairly, they're done transparently, and that the best people who are skilled, who are qualified, are appointed in the public service. We are also committed to ending load shedding and water shedding, because this causes severe disruption to normalcy of life and has various and severe consequences for our economy. And we're also the only party with a proven track record in governments where not only do we manage our finances very well, but you are guaranteed that where the DA governs, you're going to get value for money for your rates and the services that you get, that you're going to have ethical leadership elected into office. And where we err, there will always be accountability. No one will be protected for underperformance or getting entangled in illegal dealings. We will display at all times the best of what South Africa is when it comes to ethical leadership.
There you have it, guys. That was The Movement with Solly Malatsi. Join us next for the episode of The Movement with another political party. Thank you.